Hello again everyone, I'm Dylan, this is All You Can Board, and this is the first installment in a new series we're going to try out on the channel, which is sort of like a monthly wrap-up that you've seen other channels do, where I talk about all the games that I've played in the last month. I'm not going to do reviews on these games, but I am going to talk about my experience with them. Some of them will be games that I've played previously many times, some of them will be games I played for the first time. I'll tell you about my experiences with them. This might help you inform some of the purchases you're thinking of doing, or if you've been interested about like, oh, what are your thoughts on this, or have you played this game? This will be a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, a little bit more of a candid conversation. At the end, after I've gone through all the games I've played, I'm also going to give you my top 3 plays of the month. Now, these won't be my favorite games of the month, but just the actual sessions that I had. Now, there could be that a game that I normally don't gravitate towards, I had a really memorable session. Maybe that's my session of the month. I'm going to go over those for you so you can kind of get an idea that sometimes games that, you know, might not be my favorite can sometimes have these really memorable moments and vice versa. So I'll do that. I'll give you my biggest surprise of the month as well as my biggest disappointment of the month, just to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain by like what we're playing, what is going on, and what our thoughts are on some of these games. Now, this segment, this series is going to evolve. I might start including different things in here depending on the feedback I receive. So if you like what you're seeing here, let me know. If there's other things you'd like to see me cover, whether it be about the games I've played or something else entirely that might fit into a monthly wrap-up type of video, let me know, because like I said, I would love to have this sort of evolve and be something that you guys can really rely on for whatever it is that you like to get out of these types of videos. So let's not waste any more time. I do have my trusty phone device here that is going to remind me some of the games I played. I do have them all tracked, so I just started tracking them as sort of a New Year's resolution in 2022. I know a few people and friends of mine that track their plays, and I've always sort of wondered if I should. I'm going to do it all of 2022 so I can look back on everything I've played, and that's going to help me do this series as well. So let's kick things off with the first game I played in 2022, and that was The Mind. Now, I've talked a lot about this game on the channel at different points in different videos and featured it. I love this game. It's just a very simple a game for, you know, 2 to 4 players, where you're basically just trying to play cards in ascending order, but no one knows what's in each other's hands. So really what the game becomes is trying to get on the same wavelength as the person you're playing with to know what their tendencies are. Is this someone who, you know, if they hold a 19 in their hand, won't even hesitate to play it even though no cards have been played? They'll just assume no one has the 1 to 18. If so, you gotta sort of adapt to that play style. If you're playing with someone very reserved and they don't know whether they should or shouldn't play, that's gonna make you adapt. If you can start to learn tendencies where someone, you know, starts to bite their lip when they have 2 numbers that are close together, that will start to be a tell. You're really learning about the person or the people that you're playing with more than you are the rules of the game, and that's what makes The Mind so unique. So I played this at the start of the year with a really dear friend of mine. It was the first time we ever played The Mind together, but she had played previously because of my recommendation on her, hearing about it on the channel. And so we finally played it together, and we always joke that we have sort of this, like, you know, mind meld connection with the way that we sometimes think about the same things at the same time, or whatever the case may be. We played it 2 players. We got to level 8, I believe it was, on the first time we ever played together, which out of 12 levels, I think that's pretty good. So it was a ton of fun. I honestly love playing The Mind with new people. Or new people to me anyways, that I haven't played with before, because I basically am coming in with a fresh slate. I don't know how they're going to approach this game. I don't know what their tendencies are going to be, or, you know, how aggressive or passive they're going to be with their plays. And there was just a lot of funny moments, like there normally is in The Mind, where, you know, I would put a card down and I'm like sliding it across the table, and I'm almost waiting for for her to go, actually, hang on. And then, like, all of a sudden I want to play because I'm so hesitant myself to make plays. And as we got to later levels, suddenly we've learned, you know, what someone not doing anything means. Okay, so they probably don't have a number that's close. And then I feel safer making my plays. So I won't talk anymore about it. I've talked a lot about this game on the channel, but needless to say, I had another successful play of it. It's one of those games that I don't think I've ever had it be a miss. So I was really pumped to start the year off with this game, and it had been a while since I played it too. So it was a ton of fun. So that was The Mind. After that, we played a game that was, I think it's still on Kickstarter right now. I guess at least at the time that I'm filming this. I don't know if it will be when it's posted, but that is, ooh, Jesus. That is Skytear Horde, which is a prototype copy, so it's in this like little pizza box style box. That's why you heard all the components move around. But as I said, Skytear Horde is on, or was on, Kickstarter, might still be. And we had a video on the channel, which I'll link above in case you're interested in seeing some of our, you know, footage on it and some of the thoughts I had on it. Skytear Horde is a solo or cooperative game, which is a card battling game where you're basically going against the monster deck. So there's a lane system that you may be familiar with other card games that you may have played like Hearthstone. It's similar but not exact to Hearthstone. It's just the closest comparison I can think of. And basically you're going to constantly have different monsters coming out of the deck, and you're trying to respond by putting your allies and your cards into the lanes to make sure that their attacks don't go right through to your gate or your keep, and you have to basically be getting your attacks to go through the empty lanes to damage their gate to eventually have the final big huge boss comes out that takes up to 2 lanes on the board basically, and then defeat that to win the game. So I played this a few different times this month. I think I played it 3 times solo, and I played it once cooperative. Maybe I even played it 4 times solo. I have to look here. I'll look after, but at least 3 times solo, and once cooperatively with Carlo as well. I had a ton of fun with Skytear Horde. This was a really fun time. I thought it was going to land with me based on everything I knew about it before we were even sent the prototype. I was really pumped about it. I didn't play Skytear, but this one was just speaking to me with the because it's a completely different system than Skytear. It's in the same universe, but very different gameplay. I had a lot of fun with this. Honestly, I probably would have come back more if this was the retail copy, and the reason I say that is because there's more variety in the final copy of the game. You're going to have more monster decks. You're going to have the ability to do deck building and things like that. I think if that had all been the stuff that I had access to in here, because this is limited what was in the prototype, I probably would have played a whole bunch more because I just would have wanted to explore everything. So this is one that I think when the physical retail version comes out, I'm definitely going to want to explore it and see all the different combinations and what some of the other, monster decks and stuff have to offer. There's just a lot of really cool stuff, even the way that they have handled this minion system where if you leave the minions unattended, it's discarding cards off the top of your deck, and if your deck runs out, you lose the game. Lots of fun stuff. I had a ton of fun with all the plays of Skytear Horde this month, and I'm likely going to keep playing it with this prototype copy until I have the retail version. So really fun. That was Skytear Horde. Okay, I was making sure there's no noise when I turn that over. All right. After that, a game I don't have physically here because it's not my copy, but I play it once a month with my group, and that is the King's Dilemma. So I meet with my group once a month to play the King's Dilemma. I believe we've played like 7 sessions or 8 sessions now. I love the King's Dilemma. When we finally finish the campaign, I know I'm long overdue to do content on it at this point. I am going to cover the King's Dilemma in some way on the channel because I have a lot to say about it. So I don't want to get too in-depth here, but I will say that the King's Dilemma is a campaign game. It is one that is basically all built around a voting system. So you're essentially on this King's Council, and you're going to have different dilemmas, of course, come to you that are going to be happening in your kingdom. And as a King's Council, you need to vote on these, either aye or nay, or you can choose to pass if you don't think it influences you. And all the decisions on the vote are going to move these markers on the main board up or down in a variety of different ways. Everyone has their own personal hidden agendas that are essentially where they want these little pieces on the middle board to be. You might want all of them to be in the center of the board. You may want you want one to be super far to the top, one super far to the bottom. Everyone's going after certain things, and so the way you vote is going to be somewhat selfish towards how you want to score at the end of the game based on the position of these markers. But at the same time, everyone's house has an overarching theme and goal that's going to carry out through the entire campaign. So you're managing the way you want your entire campaign to unfold and hopefully winning the entire thing, but also the short term of what's going to happen in this one session you're playing. So honestly, it's hard to really describe why I'm enjoying the King's Dilemma so much, because at its core, you just think all you're doing is voting constantly. But the conversations that happen around the table, the morality of like having to vote against what you would really do in real life, or your own morals because you want something to happen in the game. A lot of players at our table are choosing to role play as their house. They're not really doing what they would do as a person. They're playing as what their house would do based on the description that's listed on the card, which I think is a much better way to play, because you can kind of disassociate yourself from the morality of some of these really tough decisions. There's some really dark themes in this game, so if you're not comfortable with that, you probably won't enjoy it. But every single time we played it, we all have there's a bunch of, wine and beer around the table, and we're just having these really funny, hilarious, deep discussions about these voting systems, and everyone has their own different quirks about how they approach it, that it's just been an absolute blast to play. So continuing to play every single month, that we meet once a month. I would imagine we're going to still have another 4 or 5 sessions before we finish it. So sometime I would say probably later, a little bit later in the year, maybe closer to the summer, you can see some content for King's Dilemma, and we're eventually going to be getting Queen's Dilemma, which is a follow-up. So you can imagine that that's when I'm going to pick that up basically as soon as it comes out as well. So that is King's Dilemma. Next one we're going to talk about that I played this month on the same day was Furnace. So Furnace is a game that I mentioned it in the top games of 2021, because spoiler alert, this was on the list, that when Furnace was first announced and it was even being talked about, I just like, it was not on my radar. It was something to do with the box art, it was something to do with just the theme in general, that I didn't think it was something I wanted to check out. And it was only when other content creators and other fans started to rave about the game and I was hearing it talked about so much that Carlos said he was thinking of picking it up and if I wanted to split it for all you can board. And I said, you know what, I do. Like, I now I'm really curious about this game. It's not very expensive. Let's check it out. So me and Carlo finally got it to the table this month, and I was really pleasantly surprised. Honestly, if I had gotten it to the table more this month, because we would love to play it, we're going to play it a whole bunch more still, this would have been probably one of my favorite plays of the entire month, if not my favorite play. That one session really solidified to me why it's getting so much acclaim. It essentially has this bidding system, this auction system, but at the same time as being an engine builder. So you have these different numbered discs from 1 to 4, and you're placing those bidding discs onto the different engine building cards that you're going to collect for your own engine, what you're trying to accomplish. But you're not just trying to win them. You're also trying, if you lose a bid, the number that's on your disc is how many times you have to carry out an action on this card as a sort of a consolation prize for not winning it. So if it might say on the top that you get this resource, and if you have a disc with the number 3 on it, you do that 3 times. So sometimes you want to lose bids. So you can strategically hold back certain numbers, thinking, I don't actually want to win this card. I'm just really short on this resource. So I want someone to put out their 4 so that I can put out my 3 and then get this 3 times essentially. That makes for some really interesting mechanics. A lot of it reminded me a little bit about of Keyflower. It's not the exact same, but Keyflower is some of those elements where you don't always necessarily need to win the tiles you're bidding on. Sometimes you just want to use them, and it's a matter of, you know, do you want to just do this once now or once or twice now, or do you want to have access to this for all your future turns? And depending what round of the game it is, that changes things too. And obviously you're building a little engine to try to like maximize how you're basically feeding your resources through your little engine to be able to be turned into points most efficiently. So after only playing it once, I'm limited in how much I've explored it, but even from that one play at 2 players, which is probably the least desirable player count, I would say, for Furnace, I'm really, really intrigued. So I'm thinking that once we start playing this with 3 and 4, I'm really going to see what all the fuss is about even more, because I'm already seeing it at 2. So expect that as I play this more, you see this pop up on our channel a little bit more. And I think I would love to feature this in some sort of video, whether that's a full-blown review or whether that's, you know, in relation to something else. There's a lot to talk about with Furnace, more than I can just talk about right now, but I did have a whole ton of fun with it. All right, moving on. The next game I played, I also don't have here, even though I really wish I had it here, and that is Hadrian's Wall. So I played Hadrian's Wall a few times. Carlo left it here one time and let me play it. I got a bunch of plays in. I am looking for a copy of this, and honestly, it was available at a Canadian retailer right as I was going to bed, an online retailer. And I said to Carlo, because he's the one who told me, I said, if I wake up and it's still available, it's meant to be, and I'll place the order. I woke up and it wasn't available, it was sold out, and I thought, I'm an idiot. Like, why didn't I just order this thing last night? So I'm still looking for it. Hadrian's Wall is a roll and write, but it's a pretty complex roll and write, at least at first glance, and at first, you know, your first time going through the rule book. After you understand all the iconography and read through it and play it once, it actually is not as complicated as it looks, but man, is it fun. There's so much going on. There's all the joy of all the combos that you're doing. Basically, when you do this, it's going to give you access to this. It just reminds me of like things I used to build as a kid. I used to make like mazes, and these elaborate mazes was something that was really popular in my school, where you build this whole maze, draw it on paper, but like it wasn't just like trying to find your way through. You had to like find your way to the key, and the key unlocked the door, and then the door allowed you to hit this switch that turned off all the electricity. Like, it was one of those really complex things. And I'm making this weird comparison because Hadrian's Wall, in some ways, it's like, this is what I want to do, and to do that I'm going to do this, but to do that I have to do this, and I'm going to need more resources, so I'm going to check this box so I can get more resources at the start of every round. It just felt like I was having this really fun solo experience. And the interesting thing is Hadrian's Wall is not a solo only game, but like Carlo has said to me, I don't think I'd want to play it anything other than solo, because the way I'm enjoying it, I just want to sit back and experience Hadrian's Wall, see what the highest scores I can achieve are, and just try to find new strategies each time depending on which cards are coming out and things like that. So I cannot wait to have my own copy of this so I can explore it more. And I also do want to try it with like, 2 or 3 and just see if I'm correct in that, or if maybe there's some extra joy in having some other people at the table. But it's just, what a beautiful game. I love it. I cannot wait to play it more. I need to, next time I see it available online, I need to just not try to come up with these reasons to be like, well, I'll wait, I'll leave it in fate's hand. I need to just place the order. But yeah, that was Hadrian's Wall. I played it a bunch of times this month, I think 3 times total, and I had a ton of fun with it. All right, and next up, another game I played this month, obviously, is Radlands. I talked a lot about this. This was, I'm not going to spoil where it was in my top games of 2021 in case you haven't watched that. If you haven't, you should go check it out. But it was very high up. Radlands is a phenomenal game. When I played it this month, me and Carlo played it in December a few times. I played it with my friend Braden, who, if you're on our Discord, he's one of our moderators on the Discord, so you may have talked to him. And so I introduced it to him for the first time. He really, really enjoyed it. And I am blown away how every time I play it, it's never losing its luster. There's some games that, I played 4 or 5 times, and right away I'm like, this is one of my favorite games of the year. This is now in my top whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like it's like the diminishing returns over and over again. As you play it, you realize the luster's wearing off, or, oh, I think it was just the initial shine of the new that got me, or whatever. Radlands is not having that issue at all. It's just, it's different enough each time, especially all the variety in the camps that you have. There's so many in there, and they all pair differently together. So it's not just about, oh, I've had this one before. You may have had it before, but you haven't had it in conjunction with these ones as well. And because you're getting 6 of them to choose from, you have to choose 3, you have a lot of choice in how you're going to build up your starting position and what that's going to mean for your strategy, which means that every time you play Radlands is going to feel a little bit different. And because you're also both drawing from the same deck, there's so many cards that I may have seen in the game, but I haven't personally drawn in the game before, and or cards that I've drawn that now I like, as I draw them, I'm like, okay, now I know my strategies. I'm gonna try one of these builds. I'm gonna do this, and that's what I love about card games like this. When you can say, like, here's a build I'm gonna try, or I can adapt based on which cards I'm drawing. Radlands has that, but you're also having to respond to what your opponent is end up getting access to as well. So you can, there's never enough resources with the water discs to do everything you want in your turn. So you're always leaving a game of Radlands wanting to play again because you feel like you didn't play enough, even though you had a full experience. And that's the best way I can describe it, is it always leaves you wanting more. So I still want more. As I'm talking about it now, every time I talk about this game, I'm like, who can I call up tonight to play Radlands? Like, maybe as I meet more of you, more of you who live here in Manitoba as well, I can find more people who just want to play Radlands all the time. Because honestly, I feel like this is one of those games that I could play like every single week, multiple times, and I'm never gonna get bored of it because it's a quick game and there's always something to love about it. So I continue to love Radlands. I don't think that's gonna change, and it's been amazing this month. Can't wait to play it again. Next up, I played a game that we had a video on our channel for, and that is Marvel Dice Throne. So Marvel Dice Throne was my first experience into Dice Throne. I have a whole video talking about it, so I'm not going to spend too much time here because I've given a lot of in-depth thoughts on it. But as a quick summary, Dice Throne is a really popular game. Obviously, there's a whole line of them with all these unique characters. This is the new Marvel line where the Marvel characters are have all their normal thematics and things you would expect from having played games like Marvel Champions or any of the other Marvel games, Marvel United. But all of this is compatible with the entire Dice Throne system. So you can play against all your previous characters. You can take these characters through Dice Throne adventures. It's just a new set of characters to play with, especially if you're someone who loves the Marvel line of characters. So this is my first experience with it. I see the appeal now. I understand. It's basically, a battle Yahtzee that's more in depth and has a card system as well, and you're upgrading your abilities and your, it's very luck based, but as people have said in the comments, I think it's the best way to describe it. It's sort of like Hearthstone. It's luck based, but how well you can mitigate that luck, how well you can adjust on the fly and to what you're rolling and what the situation with people's health is looking like and things like that is going to make you a better player at Dice Throne. That's why there can be professional or competitive Dice Throne games and leagues and all that kind of stuff, is because there is a way that you can sort of get around that luck. And that's what I think I'm learning over time as I play Dice Throne. So I also played this with Braden. I had a really good time with it. He did too. We talked about it a lot afterwards about both understanding why Dice Throne is popular, because it's so accessible, very inexpensive. You get 2 characters in a box like this and you have everything you need to play until you want more characters. So I had a really good time with it. I'm excited to play it more, but I'm even more excited to try out some of the other characters that have been released before. And now I'm really intrigued by Dice Throne Adventures, because if you know me, campaign games, dungeon diver type games, like those adventure games in general like that in the board game space are intriguing to me. So the fact that you can take some of these characters through it sounds really good to me. I need to look into it more because I completely did not look into that when that was on Kickstarter, things like that. So now that I've played it finally, it's time for me to go back and experience that. So that is Marvel Dice Throne. I'm gonna take a sip of this drink because I'm realizing I'm talking so much, my mouth's just so dry. Which, by the way, is the new mango flavor of bubbly. Which, if you're a bubbly fan, this is now my favorite flavor. And before was pineapple, which I know is probably not a popular choice. I know everyone usually says like cherry or something, but this mango is damn good. Okay, moving on. We have Riftforce. This is another game I played with Braden on that same night. We played Radlands, Marvel Dice Throne, and Riftforce back to back when we hung out that day. So that's a good set of games. So Riftforce is a game that I heard talked about a lot, and Carlo heard talked about a lot. I've played it before. This is my first time playing it. Me and Carlo had played it previously. Really enjoyed it. Played it with Braden and had a vastly, I don't want to say vastly different experience. I enjoyed it just the same. But because you have a different set of characters or the heroes, whatever they are, every single time you play, you're going to get a different set of 4 of them. It is going to feel a little bit different, especially your first 4 or 5 times playing it, as you have different combinations. So it felt very different from when I played with Carlo. I had completely different set of characters. I think maybe one of them was the same, and my strategy had to be completely different. And I've lost both times I've played this. I lost to Braden and I lost to Carlo, but it's one of those things where I understand why I'm losing, and when you try a strategy and you can be like, this is why I lost. It's fun because then you want to come back and say, okay, how do I repair what happened last time? How do I change my approach? Because what I did with Carlo and with Braden both times is I saw an opening to push for the victory because it's the first person to get to 12 points. And I was close, and I thought, I can have a big play this turn, which will put me right at the threshold of winning. I think it would get me to 10, or it would get me to 11, or whatever it is. And so I make this big push, and then realize it basically exhausts my resources, exhausts my board, and I have to spend time building it back up to try to get those last 1 or 2 points I need. And before I can do that, Braden swooped in and got the victory with a really good play using, I think it's the Shadow guys, I can't remember what they are, but anyways, and got the victory. And the same thing happened with Carlo. I pushed ahead, had a really good turn. It was 2 points ahead, and I felt like, ooh, that was a good play. That was the game changer. And then I ended up losing because I had exhausted basically everything I had going on. So Riftforce is really fun. It's essentially a card battling game that uses these lanes where I'm placing my cards on one side, and you're placing your cards on the other side. And every card has different abilities and is going to damage cards on the opposite lane in different ways, sometimes in lanes that it's not even across from. And you're basically just trying to destroy their numbered cards, their creatures that are on their side. Every time you do, you're going to get one of these. I can't remember what they're called. It's the point system, but there's a name for it, and it's completely escaping me. I am not... Or maybe it is Riftforce. Oh my god, if it's Riftforce, it is. It's Riftforce. That's the most embarrassing thing. What's it called in Riftforce, the point system? It's called Riftforce. I'm not even going to edit that out. I'm going to leave it in so you guys can see my foolery. So anyways, every time you destroy one of your opponent's creatures, you're going to get one of these Riftforce. It's the first one to 12. There's other ways to get Riftforce as well, but it's just this it's a race, essentially, to most efficiently be able to place your cards and utilize them. And on your turn, you can't do both. You're either adding to your board or you're using. And to use cards on your board, you have to discard a card that is of the same color or the same number of the ones that you want to use. So it's really interesting. Sometimes you have a great board, but you don't have the cards in your hand to be able to utilize it. I had a lot of fun with Riftforce. I want to explore a little bit more because I haven't used all the characters, but it was a successful second play of it, that's for sure. All right, the next game I played, you're going to get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here because this is a game we're not going to talk about in our channel for another month, and it's not released. This is going to be coming to crowdfunding in about a month's time, so you're going to get a little sneak peek here. And that is Pathways. So Pathways is a dexterity game that is involving these discs that it kind of looks like a crokinole style of game to me. You might be thinking as you look at it, is that it takes place on a rectangular board, and the idea is you're flicking your discs across the board, and whoever has the most that land in the opposing, on the opposite side. So if you look at this entire side here, if I'm flicking from this side, I have to try to get as many of my discs in that side as I can in the final row, and my opponent's trying to do the same. And to do that, you got to create yourself pathways by getting discs to fall in across the way, because at the beginning stage, stages as you flick, it's going to bounce off some of these holes, and you're not going to have a clear path with your shots. So you're essentially creating yourself a pathway to be able to get as many in as you can. At the same time, there's going to be some discs that just sit up there. You're going to be banking off of them, trying to knock some of your other ones in, knock your opponents out. It's a very simple game. I'm not going to get too in depth about this because I am going to talk about this more when it comes to crowdfunding and we have our video on it. But I will just say I've been playing it this month, and it has been very fun. And I played it a couple different times, and it was just. You know what? I'm going to save a lot of it for the video when I talk about it because I don't want to get too much into it. I will say that if you are intrigued by this, look for a video in about a month's time, and we'll have our full breakdown of what it is and if you might want to back it for yourself. So keep an eye on that for crowdfunding. That is Pathways. All right, the other game I played this month, which is an older game, older-ish, that I don't have with me here, and that is Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising. We have a review and how to play on our channel for this. It has been a long time since I played this, but I was introducing it to someone that is a huge Harry Potter fan, and I hadn't played in a while, so I was excited to go back to it as well. I had a really good time with it. I forgot how surprisingly fun it is because I like Harry Potter. I read all the books growing up, but I'm not, you know, a completely rabid fan by any means, and the system is fairly simple, and I'd heard a lot of good things about the Hogwarts Battle deck building game, and it's not quite, I don't think, you know, it's nowhere near as popular as that game, and I think it's less unique than that game, but at the same time, you're basically trying to take down Voldemort or he who should not be named, I should say, in the middle of the board. And to do that, there's a bunch of wizards at all these locations that are on the map, the 3 locations, and you have to go to these locations and then basically roll your set of dice for your wizard that you start with, and then try to match symbols to be able to recruit wizards to your team. And as you recruit more wizards, you might get access to more dice, you might get access to more abilities that allow you to manipulate the dice or do other things. So you get yourself more powered up. Each wizard has a health total as well. You're going to be getting damaged by Death Eaters around the map. You have to heal your own wizards. Some of them are going to die off, or you know, I don't think it's actually death in the game. I think there's another mechanic. If too many are eliminated, you lose the game, and you have to beat Lord Voldemort before that happens. So if you want to know more, we have a how to play and a review on our channel. You can check it out. But I had a fun time with it. We lost. It's a pretty hard. I think when me and Carlo played, we won. If I'm not mistaken, that was a couple years ago or a year and a half ago. This time we lost, and I don't even think it was that close. So I think you have to really not take for granted that this game is going to be very easy or anything like that, because it's, you know, slightly more oriented towards a younger audience. It's actually pretty difficult, but if you're a Harry Potter fan, it does come with a really nice painted Voldemort. I don't even want to call it a mini. It's a full-blown statue of Voldemort in there. So it's really cool. The table presence is phenomenal. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, I think that's going to appeal to you if the gameplay doesn't. But either way, I would recommend checking it out if you are a fan. After that, I played a game that is not going to surprise anyone, and that is Marvel Champions. I played 4 sessions of Marvel Champions back to back to back to back. And then I think I played the next day as well a couple times, and that was because of the new hero pack that came out, which was Vision. So I did all my playtesting for Vision. I spent the entire Friday and Saturday playing him in solo, 2-handed modes against a variety of villains: Rhino, Claw, Ultra, and I think I did Green Goblin as well. Those are usually the 4 I do for my playtesting, if you're curious. Sometimes I'll do an odd different one if I find that a hero is really powerful. I want to see how powerful. I might take him through a campaign or something. But I had a ton of fun with Vision. I have a full review up of the entire Vision pack, so you can check that out if you're wanting to know more about it. But every time I play Marvel Champions, I have a great time. Vision was no different. He had a really interesting play style, and I really enjoyed some of the allies that were in the deck, and the fact that the Android keyword was made such a priority in this deck. You had a bunch of allies with the Android keyword, as well as obviously Vision himself, but he had a card, I think it's 616 Hickory branch lane, Hickory something lane, that allows you to basically get an Android ally from your deck, which made some of his, like a signature ally, Vivian, way more powerful, because you're constantly being able to go and get that card whenever you want access to it. So I had a really fun time playing. Every time it had been a while actually since I played Marvel Champions. Not a while, I think like 2 weeks, which for me I guess is a while, but because of the holidays and everything like that, and it had felt like a while since I had gotten a new pack, because the last one had been Valkyrie, but that had been over a month before, so I hadn't really been talking about Marvel Champions as much, besides when we did the end of the year awards. So it was really fun to jump back into it. It reminded me how much I love this game, and I can't wait for some of the new packs to come out, especially the Sinister Motives expansion box, because everything about that is just has me super pumped. So yeah, I played a whole bunch of Marvel Champions. Obviously, there's not really much more to say because I talk about Marvel Champions so much on this channel, but I had a great time with it, and I played a whole bunch on that Friday and that Saturday. The next one is another game that is not released. This is coming to Kickstarter or to crowdfunding as well, and we will be covering it when it releases. You're going to get another little peek behind the curtain here. Another game we were checking out, and that is Antares Kingdoms. So this is a really interesting game. Again, just like Pathways, I'm not going to get too much into it because we are going to have content coming out on it, and it's not released for you to go check out for yourself. But there's just a ton of really cool stuff going on here. I don't know if you guys can see what's going on in the back. The rule book is very large. I know when I first got this, Carlo took a look at the rule book. We got it in PDF form and was thinking, oh my god, this is going to be a super complex game. But really, it's actually like, I think once you know the rules and it's not your first play, you could probably play Antares Kingdom in like 30 to 45 minutes. Like, this is a really quick game after you know all the rules. The first play, there's gonna be more going on, but essentially it plays over the 3 different rounds, like 3 different I think it's called ages, or something like that. Anyways, 3 different sections, and in each one there's going to be 10 cards that are sort of in the middle of the board. Each one you're going to flip over, so basically each one has 10 rounds, 12 rounds, something like that, and every single one you're going to be flipping over one of these cards, and it could be a harvest, it could be that there's going to be a battle happening, and you're going to have to prepare your tableau of cards and what you're collecting to basically prepare for either being attacked, having your kingdom be attacked, or potentially there being a bountiful harvest, and that's going to benefit you by getting you more gold. You're going to be collecting a whole bunch of different sets. It's like a set collection game, so you're going to be collecting different cards from having drawn them off the top of the deck, and certain cards you're going to be exhausting to get uses out of them. But if they're exhausted, they go out of your kingdom, and it takes 3 turns for them to come back and go back into your kingdom. So you may be exhausting certain cards to be able to power up or do other things with other ones that you have access to, only for them to be able to get through this exhaustion 3-tiered thing back into your kingdom, and then at the end of the round, you're going to score based on how many you've collected in certain sets, and every one you want to collect a different amount to be able to score for them. And there's other ways to score. Sometimes you want to have, like, say 2 of one and 2 of this one and 1 of another, and that's going to lead to you getting extra points at the end of the game as well. So I'll go into a lot more when we actually cover the game for the crowdfunding campaign, so expect to see content for this right at the beginning of March. But I've been playing through Antares Kingdom. I've been pleasantly surprised by it, and there's a lot I think people are going to enjoy about this game when it's available to crowdfund. So if you're interested, keep your eye on the BGG page and for everything as it comes out at the beginning of March. All right, the next game that I played, and I played this with Carlo, and we'd wanted to play this game for a while, but finally got it to the table. That is Corrosion from Capstone Games. So Corrosion is one that appealed to me as soon as I saw it, based on the thematics and based on the components. The artwork, everything about it just jumped out at me. So we've got it to the table, and this was an interesting one. I'm going to need to play this more before I can really give you my thoughts on it, because there's tons I loved about Corrosion. It has a really interesting system that you may have seen in things like Glass Road, if you've played it, where when I play a card, it allows my opponent to basically also jump in and piggyback actions off of what I'm playing, which I really like as a system because it keeps everyone sort of engaged at the table, even when it's not their turn. So that's really neat. There was times where you could also look and see which cards had already been played by, like, when I could see what Carlos already played, and I could say, okay, I know he won't be able to follow my action because I see that the only card he could use to follow it and actually gain the benefits is played, and so that could influence what I'm playing as well. So it's not always about what you want to accomplish, it's sometimes hindering your opponent as well. That was really cool. It's sort of this temporary engine builder where you have this wheel. On your turn, you're basically playing one of these cards from your hand, or you're turning the wheel, and when you turn the wheel, it's going to activate things that you've played to further ahead slots on this wheel. But when it activates, they're also going to get removed. And so you have these temporary, or at least some of them are going to get removed. And you have this temporary engine because of that. So you're building an engine, but you're not just like, oh, I have access to this resource now. You may have access to it for 3 turns, and then it's going to be gone, and now all of a sudden you might find that you're in short supply of that resource again. So you're constantly having to build different temporary engines and different ways to gather what you need, and then you have to kind of find new ways to do that. It's a different system to wrap your head around. I know for me, I'm usually used to, oh, when I've acquired something, I'm more powerful because of that. And now that I'm more powerful, I don't have to worry about that as much anymore. What else can I power myself up on? This one, it's a seesaw. You're constantly trying to just get the things you need, and I have this, I'm plentiful here now, and all of a sudden now I'm not, and now I have to find another ways to gain access to this. So that was a little bit tough to wrap my head around, but that's not a negative. It's just that it's a different way to approach games than I'm used to. Very cool system though. The one thing that I struggled with Corrosion, and Carlo, I think the same thing, was it took way too long to play that first game. And from what I've read and heard other people talk about, I think the way we approached Corrosion that was making it take long. I think we were spending too much time trying to build up the perfect engine and trying to, manipulate everything in the exact most efficient way, where sometimes inefficiency, it will get you far in Corrosion. You just have to get what you need and try to do it as quick as you can in some ways, and that makes the games go quicker and probably makes them a little bit more enjoyable. But that first game took way too long for what it actually was. Like, if that was what every game of Corrosion was going to be in terms of term of length, this is probably not going to be a game I enjoy long term. But that's why I want to play it again. I definitely want to see how it plays over 3, 4, 5 plays, especially with 3 players and 4 players as well, because at that point, if a 4-player game is going to take me 3 hours every time, I'm going to be hard pressed to recommend this to anyone. So really curious to try it more. I would say I'm a little bit disappointed because of how much I was anticipating this game, but at the same time, there's so much I loved about it that it's not going to be my disappointment of the month or anything like that, if that's what you're wondering. So interesting first play. Can't wait to try it more, but I'm really glad I finally got to the table. So that was Corrosion. Next up, I played multiple games of a game that came out, I think it was on crowdfunding last year, and that is the one called Kabuto Sumo. So you may have heard of this. This is a dexterity game that basically involves a platform with a bunch of different discs on it, different shapes and sizes. Everyone's going to have their own unique bug character who's also going to come with their own unique special disc. It might be one that's super long, it might be one that's like along with like different tendrils coming off of it. It's going to have your own unique shape, and they're like the more powerful discs. On your turn, you're just going to be sliding a new disc onto the main playing area, and anything that falls off, you're gaining to your supply that you can then use on future turns to push onto this playing area. The whole point of the game is I have my colored character, my specific player disc, you have yours, and I'm trying to push yours off, you're trying to push mine off, and whoever does that first wins the game. So very simple game. It's a quick playing dexterity game, and because dexterity games are usually very accessible, I feel like there's a lot of people, especially younger crowds, with like how amazing it all looks when it's set up on the table. It's just a very striking game that I think a lot of people are going to have fun with it. I played it with someone who is not a huge fan of dexterity games. It was probably my own fault for introducing it, but it's good. It's good to always try, because you never know when you might be able to change someone's mind with a different experience in that genre. So it didn't land with them as much. I enjoyed it, but I was a little bit disappointed by it. I thought that I was going to enjoy it more than I actually did, and those sessions I didn't. But at the same time, I do want to keep trying it with more people, and I want to try it with people who adore dexterity games as well, because that might be a bit of an infectious feeling to have it in the session, and then that might make it so that I enjoy the experience a little bit more. I also want to try all the different bug characters and their different abilities a little bit more, because everyone has access to their personal discs, but their special disc, but you don't get it right from the start of the game. You have to do something to be able to acquire it, and some of them will go on top of other discs. There's a lot of really cool mechanics that I just haven't even explored yet, but I played multiple sessions of it. Definitely see the appeal of it, but I'm definitely going to need to play it a lot more before I can really give you a verdict and my overall thoughts on it. But either way, I'm glad I added it to my collection. Really looking forward to playing more, and the good thing is when I want to play it, it's one that plays super quick. It's not going to be, I can play a session of Kabuto Sumo in like 15 minutes or less sometimes. So this will be a really easy one for me to get multiple plays in. Next up, I played a game that I've played a whole lot of, and I've talked about a bunch on this channel. I played it again, and that is Codenames Duet. I love this game. I'm a huge fan of Codenames in general. Codenames Duet is slowly becoming potentially my preferred way to play Codenames. I like the cooperative nature with playing it this way. I think it's way more difficult, and that difficulty makes it so that I constantly want to come back to try to beat the game. Even after you find that you might be getting really good at it and you're beaten every time, there's actually, believe it or not, I don't know how many people know this, there's actually a full campaign system in here. And it's a light campaign, I use that word sparingly, but you have basically a map with a bunch of locations in the world, and each location is going to have a different amount of misses you can get or can't get to be able to win. So some locations are very hard, some are much more easy, and you're basically traveling the world, and every time you beat a location, you're putting a mark on it, you're going to the next one. So it's a mini campaign system in this box, and again, I don't know how many people realize that it has this much longevity and life to it, but there's a lot of legs in this version, and Codenames, the system in itself is so much fun. Like, I just love Codenames. This version of it is just one that every time I play it, I'm laughing, I'm smiling, and there's just so much to love about it. I played it multiple times. I almost play it every month. I played it again this month, and yeah, there's not much more I can say. I've talked about this a lot, but if you need to be sold on it anymore, give me a message on our Discord channel or leave me a comment below, and I can tell you more about it, but I absolutely adore Codenames Duet. All right. Next up, I played a game that I don't have here, but it has been out for a while, or at least a little bit, and I've heard of it talked about. I think you can even play it on Board Gamer. Oh, maybe you can't play it on Board Gamer. I can't remember now. But it's called 5211. This is a really simple card game that, like I said, I've seen talked about, but just have never looked into. I was playing, I met with a board game group, and one of them brought it to the session and asked if we wanted to play. I said, of course. It's very, very good, actually. I was blown away by how much I actually enjoyed the session. So it's called 5211 because you have a hand of 5 cards, and you're going to play in a single round. You're going to play 2 cards, then you're going to play 1, and then you're going to play 1, and then you're going to score, or not score, but then you're going to see who gets to keep cards based on that. So the way it works is there's a bunch of different colors of cards, and each of them have different numbers associated with them. As soon as might get some of these numbers wrong because it was my first time playing, and it's been about a week since I played it now. But essentially, after everyone's played their 4 cards total around the table, you're going to count up for each color how many were played. And if any of them have hit, so whichever one has the most is the only one that people are going to keep. So if yellow has the most played, everyone's going to keep their yellow cards, and that's what you're going to score for at the end of the game. So you're having to look and see what's been played to try to be able to play the ones that you think are going to end up having the most out there. However, I think if you hit 7 of any color, that one essentially busts, and now that one is eliminated, and that one's not going to score. So someone who's looking around the table and seeing that everyone might be scoring for orange can play a bunch of orange to have it bust, and then they might have their blues be the ones that score instead. So there's a really cool strategic element to having to manage that, and at the same time, I forget the name of it, but there's like this, every color has these ones that don't have numbers. They have this little animal type of token on it that I'm completely forgetting what it's called, but if there's 6 of those in play around the table for that color, those score instead of any numbers for that color. So only those animal cards are the ones that come off the board and get scored for. So there's a bunch of things that you have to keep track of and try to manage around the table. Plays super quick. You just keep going till the entire deck's done, and you count up how many you scored based on what you pulled out from each round. I loved it. I am actually going to get myself a copy of this. I'm going to be playing this with more people. It's one of those games I don't think you want to play with 2. I think you're going to be wanting to play this with 3 or 4 pretty much every time. I think I might even play up to 5, but I think you're going to be wanting to play this with a really high player count, because we played with 4, and that felt like a phenomenal player count to play this game. I had such a great time with it. Was completely surprised by it. I'm definitely going back to this one. Let me know in the comments if you played this, because this is one of the ones I missed it for a super long time, and I'm really glad that I finally played it. I'm definitely getting myself a copy. Next up, we played Cryo. So Cryo is a game that I've heard talked about for a while. Carlo as well. Carlo did pick up Cryo, and he had it set up ready to go, and we all came over and we played a session. Very, very pleased with Cryo. I'll be the first to admit that for some reason I just was not interested in Cryo. It's sometimes the games come along that are talked about, and I just think, yeah, it's a worker placement game. I played a lot of worker placement games. This one's not doing anything thematics-wise to entice me. This is probably going to be a skip for me. That was sort of what Cryo was, and I played Cryo with this group before, and what an enjoyable experience Cryo was. Essentially, on your turn, you have 3 of these like drone type not meeples, but they're actually plastic drones in your color. Essentially, you have 3 of them. On your turn, you can either place one and take the action that you place it on, or you can remove all drones and bring them back to your player board, and where you place them on your player board, you're going to get some bonus actions for that. That's the entirety of the game. Obviously, there's all these action spaces that all do different things, and that's where the strategy will come out of. You're also collecting these different vehicle cards, because there's sort of this area control section at the bottom of the board where you can send your vehicles to travel to these different caves, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most of their tokens in each of these caves is going to score the points that are listed on it. So there's an area control aspect of it too. There's a good player interaction where you can actually have people's tokens that they haven't collected yet on the board, like basically these little pods. eliminated and destroyed before they can even get access to them. But then there's cards you can get that give you powers to sort of block that from happening. Lots of cool stuff happening in Cryo. And the most pleasant surprise about this is it was our first time playing, so it took a little bit longer than normal. But this is a quick playing worker placement that for how much it has going on. I think that after you know all the rules, if you're sitting down with 3 or 4 people, this is when you can knock out in 90 minutes, maybe less with 3, almost every time. So if you're looking for a worker placement game that has deep systems and lots of strategy, but isn't going to be, a 3-hour experience every single time, Cryo is one of the ones I would now be starting to recommend, because I had a really great time with Cryo. Huge surprise for me. I really, really want to play it again. I'm really glad Carlo bought this because I think it'll be easier to get to the table. Next time we have a session with people playing games, I'm going to be suggesting we play Cryo again, because there's so many things I want to explore with it. Honestly, the only downside I had with it is the deck of cards that you're going through is very limited in terms of the abilities. You see duplicate abilities very often, so it's not a horrible thing. I just know that I'm always more interested in games where I get access to abilities that it turns out that no one else gets, and vice versa. So I'm looking around and being like, oh, what ability did you get? How is that affecting your play style? It felt like there was one ability that all 3 players around the table besides me got, and the only one who didn't get. And so it just felt there wasn't as much uniqueness, because I looked and I was like, everyone has access to the same ability, which is less interesting to me than when you have to sort of pick and choose what your strategy is going to be and not have access to everything. So that was literally the only thing that caught my attention after. Other than that, it was a huge pleasant surprise. I had a great time with it. Definitely want to go back to Cryo. That same session, we played a game called So Clover, and So Clover is an absolute joy. This is definitely a party type game, and it basically involves a clover. Surprise, surprise. Everyone has access to their own. You're going to draw cards that have this sort of hole in the center. So you can see on the back here, there's these little white cards. They have a word on all 4 sides of it, and there's a hole in the center, and you're going to plop it onto these spots in your clover randomly. When you plop them on, you're going to end up with 2 words on each clover facing one side of the clover. Those 2 words could be, for instance, sheep and clothing. You have to think up a clue that will lead people to that combination of words. So for instance, they use in the back wool. Wool can lead you to sheep and clothing. That's a really easy example. It's never that easy. And you're going to write that for all sides of the clover for these words. After everyone's filled with their clovers, you're going to remove all the cards without anyone having looked at this. Add 1 random new card into it, shuffle them together, and then you're going to put your clover in the center of the table without these cards on it. Spread out these now 5 white cards. One of them is the dummy card you put in there, and everyone else at the table, because it's a cooperative game, is now having to work together to try to guess how to align these cards to set it back up to what you were trying to lead them to with these clues. The person whose clover it is has to stay silent and just watch and see them deducing and trying to figure out how to position these cards. If they get it right in the first turn, you get bonus points. If it takes them, you get 1. If you fail to get something, I can silently remove the ones that are wrong, and you get 1 more chance, but you get less points for doing that. And then at the end, you have sort of this hall of fame, and you just keep track of your scores every time you play, and you see what the highest score you can achieve in Clover is, or So Clover. Super fun game. We played it twice back to back. I had such a great time with it. I heard about this on the Board Game Barrage podcast, and as soon as I heard them talk about it, I'm like, this is a game I'm going to love. So as soon as it became available locally, I purchased it. I'm not disappointed. This is one of the games that anytime I'm not looking for a super strategic experience, but I'm having like 4 or 5 people over, I'm definitely going to be pulling out So Clover like I used to with Codenames and still do with Codenames. This is going to be one of my go-tos. I absolutely adore it, and I completely see the appeal. I think that as more people figure out about So Clover, it's going to be one that is, I hope it hits the notoriety and the popularity of Codenames, because I honestly think it deserves it. I think Codenames is still a more influential and still slightly better experience, but So Clover is pretty close. And I think over time, I hope it becomes one of those mainstays in sort of the party type of a game. And I say party type because it only plays up to 6 as long as you want with your party games to sort of have larger player counts. It's not that this can't accommodate more, you would just need more clovers. I think that you could honestly play with as many as you want and even team up and have teams or something. But yeah, really enjoyable experience. And this is coming from the group that sat down and played Cryo and then played So Clover right after, and we enjoyed it ton. So I think that there's no discrimination here about like, oh, if this is for lighter gamers or anything. It was a ton of fun. I absolutely adored it. If you don't like word games, if that's not your thing, you might, I don't know if this one's going to necessarily change your mind, but it might, because all it is you have to it's a puzzle. You're looking at this empty clover and you're thinking, how do I reposition everything to be able to line up with what they're trying to tell me? And what are they trying to tell me? Because this word could work with this. And it has some of the Codenames aspects of it where I might give a clue to lead someone to something, and then I realize, oh my god, I didn't realize that clue also leads them to this. And yeah, there's just a whole bunch of really cool stuff to discover. If you're looking for more games like this in your collection, like party-ish type games, ones that are lighter but are just, you know, ones that you want to constantly come back to, definitely check it out. I flew under my radar until I heard about it on the Board Game Barrage podcast. Don't let it fly under yours. I think you'll love it. All right, and the last game we're going to talk about that I played, this is a Reiner Knizia game, surprise, surprise, but it's an older game that I hadn't played in a long time, and I finally placed the order to get it because I'm trying to play more of his games that I haven't played from that came out a long time ago, because I would love to do a video at some point covering like my top 10 Reiner Knizia games or just Knizia games in general, but there's tons I haven't played that I feel like I can't do that video justice till I played them, so I'm slowly knocking them off, and I played this one now. That is Ingenious. So Ingenious is it says it's the ultimate family strategy game. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I will say that I definitely see the appeal. It is a really fun game. So basically, it's this board that accommodates these hexagonal shaped domino tiles. They each have one of 6 colored symbols on them, 5 colored symbols, something like that. And you're basically on your turn just placing one of these domino type tiles onto the board so that at least one of the faces is touching another color. Every time you do, you're going to look on every flat face of the hexagon in every direction and count in a straight line how many in a row of that color it's touching. And that's how many points you're going to get. And when you get those points, you're going to move your little scoring things up on this little peg board that each player has on that specific color. So if I connect, my new orange tile to 2 more oranges, I'm going to move my orange peg up 2 times. And you're doing that for every single color. As you place dominoes, you're going to keep doing this until the board can't accommodate any more dominoes. And each color scores separately. However, your final score is only based off of your lowest scoring color. So if you have a bunch of tiles and you've just been getting tons of points in blue, green, and orange, but you neglected yellow and you only got 5 points in yellow, 5 is your final score. So you have to keep the balance of all the colors going the entire time. And it makes it very interesting because when I played, both of us were so really neck and neck. Like my lowest was 10, her lowest was 9, vice versa. And as we got near to the end of the game and I realized her lowest color, I think she realized first my lowest color was purple, she found a way to block off my access to the purples that were on the board because she didn't need purple. Purple was high up for her. So she blocked off access to purple. So I had to retaliate and say, well, her lowest is yellow, so I'm going to block off her access to yellow. And so there is this element of like, which colors do I need compared to what color do they need, and how can I block off the access while still maximizing what I'm doing. If your peg gets to the end of the entire board, you get a bonus action, get to place 2 tiles that turn instead of 1. Lots of cool stuff going on. It plays quick. It's really simple to teach. The strategy comes in just, you can't even explain the strategy all that much. You kind of just have to play it and start to understand that I can block someone, or, actually, like I want to place this tile in this way to score for 2 colors at once so I can move 2 pegs at the same time. There's lots you're going to pick up as you're going. I'm really glad I got this add to my collection. I'm going to play a whole bunch more of it, but I see why it's so popular, and apparently 1.5 million copies sold, and this is my first time buying it. I think it's going to stay in my collection for a while because it's just one of those easy games that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy when I introduce it to them. So that is Ingenious by Dr. Reiner Knizia. And that is everything I played this month. So, as I promised at the beginning of the video, we're now going to go into my top... Actually, before we do that, let's talk about my biggest disappointment of the month. So, my biggest disappointment of the month, which, there was no major disappointments this month, so this is just going to be out of these, which one fits the bill. And for me, that's going to be Kabuto Sumo. And the reason that's the case is I think I had higher hopes going into this because of how beautiful it looks when it's set up and how intriguing it is to have this system for a dexterity game where you're sliding things. It's just very unique, sliding things onto the main board, and whatever falls off is what you're collecting, and it's this push and pull on the player pieces to see who can push the opponents off first. I was really intrigued by it, and it just fell a little bit flat for me in those 2 plays. And again, it could have also been because the person I was playing with is not the biggest dexterity game fan. That could have impacted it. So I'm definitely going to give Kabuto Sumo more chances to land with me. I'm definitely going to play it some more and see how it goes. I just know that the first couple games didn't hit the level I was hoping for it to hit. That's why it ends up as my sort of disappointing experience. But I'd be really curious if you've played it, what you think of Kabuto Sumo, and sort of if you do love it, what is it about Kabuto Sumo you love? And if you don't, tell me if any of the stuff I said is sort of, you know, resonating, or if there's other reasons you don't enjoy it. My biggest surprise of the month is going to be 5211. I am surprised that it took me this long to play it. I'm surprised that when I played it, I'm surprised I was as surprised as I was. I've heard so many people talking about it, and I just, for whatever reason, never really gave it a chance, never looked into it enough. And now that I have, like I said, I'm going to be buying it for myself. I'm anxious to play it again. It kind of felt like the way I feel when I play games like Colorado. It's just a very simple card experience that leaves you very satisfied because you're doing a lot of thinky things and having to make a lot of interesting decisions that you feel like you can really swing the game. If all of a sudden I look at the board and I say, everyone around the table is going to be scoring for yellow, and it just so happens that I can play a yellow this turn and then a yellow the next turn to have yellow bust, I can hold some of that information back, get people to play more of their cards, and then have it bust, and all that went to waste. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do on your turn besides just, oh, orange has the most, I'm playing orange. It does not come down to that at all. You end up having to really think about what's going on and also make guesses on what your opponents are going to be playing and what they're not going to be playing. So really big surprise for me. Definitely want to play it again. Let's quickly break down my top three plays of the month. Again, this isn't my favorite games of the month. These are the actual sessions I had and why, and I'll quickly explain why they ended up where they were. So number 3 is going to be Radlands. Radlands, it ends up in number 3 because it just continues to hit all the right notes for me. I had a great play with Braden. I had a great play with Carlo before, a couple plays with Carlo before that. It continues to be one of my favorite games as I play it more and more. So that's why it's number 3 this month. Number 2 is going to be Soul Clover. Thought I would really enjoy this game. I exceeded all my expectations. Like I said, we played it twice back to back. Such a great game. I highly recommend if you like those type of puzzly word games to check it out. I think you'd really love it. And my number 1 play session of the entire month is going to be Cryo. Cryo was a huge hit for me. Like I said, it flew under my radar, not because I didn't know about it, because I knew about it and chose not to really look into it or you know, to buy it or to order it. Carlo got it. I'm so glad he did. I had such a phenomenal time with Cryo. I can't wait to come back to and play it again. So that is going to be my favorite play of the month. Hope you enjoyed this video. There was a lot of games to talk about. Obviously, this is probably a longer video than even I was thinking it was going to be. But let me know what you think. If you enjoy that, if you are sort of kicking back and just wanted to hear what I played and you're enjoying that it's a longer format, or there's other things you'd even want me to cover, let me know. Or if you're like, hey, you know what, I love hearing about all these games, but I'd like it if you just talked about each one for a minute and no more than that. Tell me that in the comments. I'd love some feedback on this. I want to do this every single month. Maybe Carlo jumps in, maybe it's both of us, maybe it's just one of us, but whatever the case may be, give me all your feedback. I would love to hear it, and I think this is just a really fun format to just sort of kick back and say, here's what I've played, and then have you guys tell me in the comments what you guys have played, what I'm going to ask you now. Tell me in the comments what you played this month. Did you play any of these games as well? If so, what did you think? Which other games did you play that I didn't mention? I'd love to hear about them. And as we now are saying at every video, we do have a Discord channel. Jump into the Discord channel. The link is in the description. You can chat with us about all this stuff. There's a bunch of really fun and interesting conversations, some board game related, some not, going on in there. We have merchandise. We have a Patreon. There's a bunch of stuff you can find in the description. A bunch of really exciting things happening with the channel. Thank you so much for watching. It's been an amazing start to the year. It's only going to get better. We'll see you in the next one.